What would it feel like to be free? Do you constantly try and make changes in your life but always slip back into old ways? I used to be constantly frustrated by my lack of willpower. What I never knew is that there was a reason why I could not control myself and that there are processes that you can follow to regain your freedom. I interview some of the most knowledgeable and compassionate minds talking about breaking all varieties of bad habits and how to actually live a joyful and fulfilling life. Listen to the show and hit subscribe to free yourself from the shackles of the mind. And if you find some benefit, please share it with a friend and let's make the world a better place together. Welcome to the Break the Chain podcast. I'm here today with Finley Worthington. Finley is a recovering ketamine addict who was using for approximately 6 years. Since getting sober, he has set up Ketamine Education Services, using his personal experience to help others on their recovery journeys. He runs support meetings and goes into schools and colleges, educating teenagers and adults about the dangers of ketamine addiction and how to get help. Finley, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
You're most welcome. I was wondering if you would mind sharing a bit of your story with us, please.
Yeah, of course I will, not a problem. So yeah, I mean, it can take, you could take hours really if you start diving into stuff. So what I'll do is I'll try and break it down into about 15, 20 minutes, try and paint a good picture and get the sort of main stuff in there. So I started smoking weed when I was about, I'm going to say maybe 14, 15-year-old. Started smoking it every day. Then cocaine come on the scene. I became quite heavily addicted to that at 16, 17. And then when I was about 18, all it was, simple as this, I got a text off one of my friends, and he just said, I've got some ketamine there. Now, at that point, I'm already involved in drugs, so there's no wow factor to it because it's not got the sort of stigma like you would with heroin or crack or, if someone would have sent me a text like that, I know exactly what it is. I know not to take it. I know where it takes you. Now, with ketamine, there was nothing attached to it. So young, naive, stupid, all that sort of stuff that you are when you're younger. Just said, yeah, I'll have some, and there was a festival the day after, Beat Herder Festival, not so far from me in Lancashire, and just seemed a good idea, I thought I'll give it a try. And for the first sort of 10 times, I'm going to say that I took it, I hated it, and people often say to me, they'll look at me like that, if I'm doing a talk and I explain that, and they'll be like, well, why are you sat here? Why have you been in rehab? Why have you been addicted to it for so long? The fact of it is how I describe it to people is my brain on a subconscious level loved the disassociation that ketamine give me. So any of the mental health problems or the sort of, the problems that you have going on in day-to-day life with work and money and all that sort of stuff, the minute I took ketamine, it was gone, It is a dissociative drug, and that is exactly what it did for me. The sort of the physical trips, the stuff that I actually seen while I was on it scared me at first because I never took anything that was sort of psychedelic. So it was like, whoa, out of control, seeing all kinds of stuff, and it was quite scary and quite intense. I remember one of the lads that I was with who'd seen me on it first time I took it, he said, and you scared me, I had to leave you because I thought you were going to die. He said, you just looked. And it started from there. Now, very quickly after that, it got to one of them where you're taking it on a night out, you're taking coke, because that's what we usually took, but then ket were creeping in. And then very slowly, on a Sunday, there'd be a little bit of ket that I'd have left, so I'd have to sniff it. Then it were a Monday and a Tuesday, and so on and so forth. And it got to the point where, I was waking up and it's all I could think about. Before I went to sleep, I was sniffing it, just consumed me, literally 24/7. I'd even dream about it and all sorts. And the sort of the first effects that I got, which is similar to most people, is sort of ket cramps and, burning bladder and that sort of stuff. Now, you're looking at around 2020, 2021 when this happened. So I didn't know anybody that had been, addicted to it that I could ring or message. I Googled it. I thought, let me actually look at what I'm putting in my body here, because it was, to me, I was almost like a bit of a test dummy in my sort of, my crowd and the people that I knew. So I Googled it and I just put in ketamine dead simple, for let me see what comes up. And back then, I remember going through pages on Google, write down, and every one of them was positive, about how it's so good in your hospital settings and for horses, and how it's being used in America by psychiatrists to do these sort of anxiety and depression treatments, and they're using it for alcohol withdrawals, and it's all singing its praises. Now, as an addict, we don't need someone to give us a green light or a justification because we find it anyway. But for me to see all that, I'm like, all right, I'm sweet. It's a good drug, it's safe. I'm not going to get depressed. And I started justifying it all with these sort of these things that I was reading. Now, the cramps and stuff went on a little bit, and they disappeared. And I remember the first time I passed blood in my urine. Now, no one had warned me of this. I didn't know this was even a possibility. And I went to the toilet, and a little bit of blood come out in my urine. And it scared me a bit. I'd never had it before, and I thought, that don't look good. But again, put it off. It's not the cat. I might have an infection or everything but the cat. And then that started to progress, and it became quite normal now that when I go to the toilet, I pass blood. The pain's getting worse, I'm losing jobs, getting into more debt, all the sort of stuff that happens with addiction was happening around me. But I was the last person to see it. And, before long, going to the toilet and these chunks of my bladder coming out. Now, at the time, I didn't know it was chunks of my bladder. It was just jelly. And the sort of way I describe it to people is like them little jelly eels that they eat, the sweets. It was like little ones of them coming out of my urine, and to get them out, I was having to push, and I had tears in my eyes, sweat coming out my head, shaking, really, really painful. After a certain amount of time, I started coming to terms that, this has got to be the ketamine that's doing this. I couldn't ignore it. But obviously, by this point now, I'm addicted. There's no dipping my toes in, and I've had to do it, and I'm going to jump out. I'm fully addicted to it, and I'm addicted to the feeling, I'm addicted to the disassociation. By this point, I'm actually enjoying the trips that I'm getting, so it was back then, apart from the pain and the sort of stuff that was happening around me, I was still enjoying the drug, and I don't ever lie to people and say I never enjoyed it, and it never did what I wanted it to do, because it did. Very quickly, that again progressed, and I couldn't get a job. I was unemployable. I just couldn't get out of bed. Some days, 3 days at a time, I'd be in bed with cat cramps, or if I'd had a little bit of money, I'd just buy enough so that I didn't need to leave my bedroom. So then, obviously, I'm isolated. I'm not seeing my family. My mates are going on these holidays, and all the stuff that happens as a young lad, and you're missing out on everything. And at the time, I didn't really see that. To me, it was just they were going on. I didn't really want to go anywhere. But I'd sort of kid myself that I didn't want to do this stuff, and my family didn't care about me, so I don't need to see them. And you really alienate yourself from everything. And looking back, it was really dark, and it weren't even the peak. It was sort of, that was just getting into the heavy using type of thing. Now, so that was sort of the physical symptoms that started. Then you've got little bits of sort of your liver and your kidneys and stuff getting little aches and pains, and obviously the blocked nose 24/7, coughing stuff up, and constant headache because you're just filling your brain with stuff. And looking back, it's sad, really. It's sad when I look back to the state I got myself in, and how I couldn't go, I couldn't leave the house without it in my pocket. If, say, for example, my stepdad said, "Can you take me shopping?" I'd say, "Yeah, you'll have to give me 20 minutes," so, and I'd drive around the corner to pick it up just to go and drop, to take him to Tesco, because if I didn't have it on me, I felt exposed. It's really weird to word. You might sort of identify with it, James. I'm not sure, but you feel vulnerable and exposed and almost uncomfortable to face a day and face reality, don't you? It gives you that comfort. It's a comfort blanket, and it just enabled me to go out and do what I needed to do and just be completely shut off from the world. And that's how I lived for years. Now, in 2021, age 22 maybe, my dates are a bit muddled up because it's just been one big blur up to getting clean properly. I decided I need to go to rehab. Now, when I say I decided, I was pushed by my parents and my family, really. The phone calls that they were making to me and seeing the emotions and seeing what I was doing to people. So I went to rehab, and again, it was like 21, 22, and I went in, and for 3 months it were in Manchester. Now you can imagine I'm doing all the fellowship meetings, all kinds of unity days, and meeting hundreds and hundreds of people. And along all that 3 months I was there, I met 2 people who had been addicted to ketamine, and they weren't sort of addicted to the extent I were. They were just sort of cocaine users who took it a little bit too much, that type of thing. So I was going to AA meetings and trying to talk about this ket, and people are looking as if to say this is an AA meeting. Going to Cocaine Anonymous and people aren't really, they're asking me questions about it, and I'm thinking, I'm here to get help, I want answers, and nobody understood, and that's just, I suppose, it's just where ketamine was at that period. It weren't exposed to people, it weren't known, even though we know it was a massive issue to society to look in your meetings and stuff, it weren't. So I did my treatment, come back to Burnley, and I relapsed, and I went worse than ever, really went off the rails. Now, there's a couple of different things that stick with me from that period of time, and one of them's with my mum. I'll always remember this, and I live with my stepdad. Now, my mum had finished work, and I'm going to pick up my ketamine. Mine's a gable end house, so I'm walking down, and I've bumped into my mum. And I've not seen her for a couple of weeks, not spoke to her. She sent me the odd text telling me she loves me, she supports me, but at this point she's took a back seat because I'm breaking her heart. And she bumped into me, and she looked at me, looked me in the eyes, and I seen her trying to find words to say, but she couldn't. Her jaw was like trying to talk, but I don't know what we're going through her head. I really don't. But at that point, I was about 8 stone. Ill as a ghost. I had a big beard, long hair. I looked really, really rough. And from a young lad who'd, like I said, smoked the weed and stuff, but I'd always been in a job and got a bit of a career and was all right financially, and kind of starting to pave a little bit of a decent life for myself, and in that space of them couple of years, it's just flipped, and addiction just got me by the throat. And, and I'm looking at my mum, and I don't know what to say. I'm disappointed in myself that I've got to this level that I have. Can't see a way out, and it's almost like I just want to get away. I don't know what to say, so I want to run and just go and hide from the world. And I see a tear come down my mum's face, and at this point I weren't, I'm not taking responsibility for anything. I'm in the peak of my addiction, and I seen the tear, and I just give her a quick hug, and I shot off. And and I talk about it quite regular, and every time it don't really get easier to talk about the fact that I stood there in front of my own mum, the woman who put me on this planet, who loves me unconditionally. She's crying because of the state I'm in, doesn't know what to do. I can't see a way out, and I've been that much of a coward. I've walked away and left her crying on a main road. It's not a nice memory. That's where it took me. My dad's in recovery. My dad rung me up a few times telling me he didn't want to be here anymore. He said, Finlay, I love you to bits, you're my lad. He said, but what you're doing to me is making me suicidal. He said, I don't know what to do myself. And I could go on and on with them sort of stories of the disappointment that I caused to my family and the heartache. And it's sad, it really is, and it's just the reality of addiction in general. Now, again, caused a load more pain, loads more consequences, trips to A&E, all the painkillers you can think of, isolation, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all of it, the full shebang. And, my mum and stuff were still sort of dropping hints about going back to rehab and changing and one thing and another. And the way I seen it was, I've tried rehab, it didn't work. And I was shut off to everything, and I was hopeless. And I just thought, ketamine, and it will take my life, or I'm going to take my life. That I'd give up. That was my mindset. Now a little bit of time went on, and I started just getting this little bit of hope, this little flicker inside me that, do you know what? I'm made for something better than this. I'm not a waster who's going to spend my life addicted to something. I've got something in me that I can do. I don't know what it is. I just had this little feeling. That with the people around me, my family, my friends, people I'd worked with, I had some really good people around me who were there when I was ready. They were there ready to jump in and to support me as I needed it. They were just waiting for me to make the steps. And this time last year, I decided, I'm going to give it a proper go. And I went into Acorn Recovery in Stockport. And my mindset this time from last time were chalk and cheese. It was, I will do anything it takes to get clean and sober, no matter what that is. And I went in and I did 3 months, did the therapy, did the meetings, the groups, I did everything I could. And I really knuckled down, because the amount of consequences I caused for myself and my family and my health and my finances, and everything was just ruined. It really were ruined. And I just did what I needed to do. I did what people suggested. Go to the meetings, get a sponsor, do the steps, do all your work in treatment, put everything you can into it, and find out why you got into taking drugs, because it started way before Ket. Ket was just something that I found along the way that did what I wanted it to do. And again, did it well, I always sort of say to people, it's my personal take, but I do believe it to be true. It's not the substance that's the problem. It's our head that's the problem. We find solution within the substance. I don't know if that makes as much sense to anyone else as it does to me, but for me, I really identify with that, and I see that that's how it is. And it was only this time round that I actually realised it's me that's the problem, not the drugs, So I got clean and sober, and similar sort of experience as 2021, where I'm going into groups, AA, CA, NA, and people are asking me questions, and I can't mention the word ketamine because it's not a ketamine meeting. So I did the 12 steps, but I said I was an alcoholic for 3 or 4 months when I did them, which didn't really matter because my attitude, well, I'll do what it takes, but it's not ideal. So I spoke with Acorn, and we set the first group up, the first group, and it took off. And then this was in Stockport. Now I'm from Burnley originally, so I thought, right, we need something in Burnley. It's where I'm from. I know so many lads that are struggling. Let me set one up in Burnley. So we did that. Set a couple of online meetings up. Set another one up in Stockport. And we just sort of rolled from there with the meetings, and they just took off and got regular people coming. We created a bit of a community. We've got WhatsApp chats and now it is literally a community. We've got all parents in one, users in another one. And it's amazing. It's amazing to see that people now have got somewhere to go and talk and identify and ask questions. And, it's a really nice thing. And it's almost the only thing that driven me was my, obviously, passion for helping, but also my experience in 2021 and my experience this time around of not having the identification that would have helped me so much. So it's nice to know that people have got that, and there's all kinds of stuff popping up now in the group chats and meetings, and it's been a long time coming, but it's needed, and hopefully more pop up. So that's a little bit about my story. There's loads of war stories, stuff that happened in between, and consequences and ins and outs of stuff, but that's a bit of a picture of it, of sort of how it started and how it progressed and how I got out of it.
Thanks for that. It's it's a really insightful look at your journey, and there was heaps of stuff in there that was, I totally agree with everything that you said. It was really on point, everything, and it was also very instructive to other people what they can do about their problems. There was quite a few things that kind of stood out for me there. There was there being no stigma attached to ketamine, and having the not being aware of what it is before you get into it. I mean, like, something I think, when people ask me what I think is a big problem about it, it's like, you don't know what it is. It's just, it seems about as harmless as eating Smarties. Like, it's just like, here's this thing, all the kids are doing it. Like, there's kids in primary school are doing it now. I've seen that they've actually set up something for children, to help children who are getting addicted to ketamine. I don't know if you see that. I think it was in the Daily Mail. I read it, and that's just like absolutely shocking that children as young as primary school age are trying ketamine, and like it's just ridiculous, because it seems harmless, fun, having a bit of a wobble around, and it's something I think is tragic. Is, I think, unfortunately, it does need that crack and heroin stigma attached to it, because of
because of what it does to your body fast. In a few years, you can be having permanent bladder damage that will last a lifetime, and it needs something so heavy. And that's like ties into the other thing that you said, is that there's hardly any K addicts in rehabs. Why do you think that is?
So, you're absolutely right. Up to, I'm going to say, probably the last 6 months now. I first went into rehab 21, there was nothing. When I first went in 2024, there was nobody. Within the first sort of 2, 3, 4 weeks of me being in there, they started trickling in. There was 3 or 4 of us. By the point that I'd left, just in our group room, which there's 15 people in it, 6 or 7 of us were ketamine addicts, and that sort of mirrored along rehabs. So I sort of think the main thing is that, again, it's the stigma sort of thing. There's a stigma around addiction, so people know they're a ketamine addict, so they've got the stigma of being an addict. However, there's not enough stigma around ketamine and what it does to you. So I think now people have started speaking out and opening up a little bit, and it's getting a little bit more normalised, should I dare to say, to become addicted to ketamine or even to be an addict at a young age. People are hearing that and they're seeing it, and they're a little bit more comfortable to put their hands up and say, I need help, I'm addicted to ketamine. So that's the reason I think they are starting to fill up, and the reason they haven't filled up, obviously the sort of flip side is that there was no one talking about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I mentioned to you, I work in a rehab, and it's interesting to see the age that people actually come into treatment. It seems people don't come in unless they have to. And it's like alcohol, particularly something where people don't start coming in until they're around 40 years old, 40, 50, 60, 70. People kind of leave it as late as possible. I think it's got the socially acceptable thing that it can be a little bit of a slow burn with the physical symptoms appearing really, aggressively. So people kind of push it off. With meth, again, like meth's huge in New Zealand. I'm in New Zealand now. If it was England, it would be Coke, I'm sure. But like 40 years old, because people seem to get away with the health symptoms and just push it down. Ketamine, people are starting to do it so young. This is just what I'm feeling on it, is that, and what I've noticed is people are doing it so young that you don't seem to have the psychological maturity to go, I need to go to rehab. My relationships with my family are a disaster. My finances are a disaster. It's like you have no responsibility, so the money side of it's less important. You're not valuing the family at that so much at that stage usually in your life, because you just out having a laugh with your mates, and like you don't really it doesn't seem so painful, and you feel like they're gonna be there forever. You haven't realised all that stuff, and then you don't you just at that stage, like between even teenage, 20 years old. I think it's only once you get to 30 years old that people really start, I think, kind of open up to the idea of rehab, unless the parents are pushing them in there. So it's kind of like I feel like that the health problems hit before the psychological maturity kicks in, and you kind of like, and that's what I think is so malevolent, it's like so evil about ketamine, is it destroys your health before your mind gets to the point where it's like, I need to sort this out. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, and I think it's a blessing and a curse. Quite contradictory, really, what I'm going to say, but I speak to, we get quite a lot of younger people coming to our groups and, in social media and schools and stuff that we do. And without the ket cramps and the stomach ulcers and the pains that you get internally, I genuinely believe that most people would not ask for help. And it's what you've just said, people don't ask for help until they really, really need it. And the point where they really need it for me is through the physical pain. Now, I'm not going to say thanks to the physical pain, but it sort of is that they're getting the consequences early on, they're getting desperate now, and they are going into rehab, whereas if that physical pain didn't happen, the chances are it's going to be like your alcohols and your cocaines, where you can go 10, 20, 30 years in peak addiction, and you're not really seeing physical effects. Your life's going to be absolutely battered, your jobs and your finances and stuff, but people keep going a lot longer, like you've just said, and with ketamine, it's that fast hitting. They get desperate very early on, which, like I say, is a blessing and a curse, Ideally, no one were taking it, and it's not giving these consequences, but they are. So I think, as sad as it is, at least they're getting these consequences early on, and they're getting desperate, and they're saying, look, there's not really many ways to turn other than get off it. And the conversations we're having are changing. The people are getting younger who are saying, I need rehab because they're in that much pain. Literally, they've got the back against the wall. There's no other avenues now. They've tried all the excuses and the holidays and the new jobs and all the sort of external factors that we think are going to change us. They've tried all that, and it gets to the point and they're like, I'm done, there's no other option for me. Sort of a flip side to that is the problem of accessing rehabs and detoxes, especially for people under 18 over here. I believe in Lancashire there's 2 or 3 rehabs for people under 18. Now, if you look at the stats for how old people are taking it, I've spoke to double figures, people under 13, 12, 13, 14-year-old in schools who are sniffing 2, 3, 4, 5 plus grams a day. If they did decide they wanted to access help and support, the chances of them getting a bed in a rehab or a detox is very, very, very slim, which is a sad thing because it ties back into the first question you asked about why people aren't talking out. And if these younger people can't access the help, people aren't seeing the success stories and the stigma's not being broken around them being addicted to a substance because people aren't getting the help because it's not there.
Yeah, and one thing that's also, like having been in the thick of it and seen people try to get help, is that one of the big problems with ketamine addiction is like you really can't help yourself much. It's like the nature of ketamine is that it makes you stupid and confused. Like you're just in an absolute daze, and like I've watched people. I've tried to help myself. I mean, I can't say I was particularly good at even trying to help myself. I was kind of like pretty useless, and I was quite happy in that space, and that was one of my problems. But I've seen people who were way more determined in that situation, who really wanted to help themselves, but actually like they're really struggling because of what ketamine actually does to you, and it's kind of like you kind of need to stop before you can actually help yourself. And that's also something that's extremely hard to do because, like, what I think, like, it's just like the thing with ketamine is it's like what it does to people is just absolutely mind blowing. The level of pain that it puts a person in, like, as you'll know and have described briefly, but like if people have the ketamine cramps plus the bladder pain, like people are completely bedridden, aren't they? Like they can't get out of bed, they can't move. They're in close to 10 out of 10 pain. What it probably feels more like 15 out of 10 pain at sometimes. It's just like a pain that you couldn't imagine was possible. And people can be in that for weeks at a time. And the only way to get rid of the pain is to take more ketamine because it's a painkiller. It's an anesthetic. So then they're just stuck in this cycle, and then you're expecting someone to get help in that situation. So it's really a hard thing. So I think that, I really think that they need some assistance, and I think most addicts usually need a little bit of assistance in actually getting in there. I know in New Zealand it's an amazing support system, and there's so many services and referrers who are helping people actually to get themselves into rehab. And I'm really happy that it seems like seems to be more rehabs popping up in the UK. My friend was telling me there's one just opened in Lincolnshire, which is fantastic. Because it just seemed like there was really, really, really very little help for a long time, and it does seem to be getting better.
Yeah, it is, and things are, like I say, things are popping up. Just to sort of going back to the pain, I often describe it as this, and I don't know if you'd agree. I describe it as a knife, a blunt knife, being heated up with a blowtorch and stuck in your stomach or your bladder, and just being twisted dead slowly, just constantly. That's how I felt, and just being pulled out and twisted and turned. And like you said, the only thing, I took all kinds of painkillers, the strong stuff, paracetamol, everything in between. And I'm not talking like 1 or 2, the dosage, I'm an addict, I'm taking 4 or 5 of each, nothing worked. The only thing, like you said, that worked was ketamine, and it unlocks a new level of fear because again, as an addict, we see it as our comfort blanket, don't we? So when we don't have it anyway, it's like, whoa, I've run out, I need some more. When you add the layer on top of the pain, and that's now your painkiller, when it does run out, you know the pain's kicking in, you know you've not got that comfort blanket. It's hard. And just to touch on what you spoke about with people being, debilitised off it, you literally can be bedbound for days at a time, like you've just said, and rolling around. I used to be curled up in a ball on my bed with tears in my eyes, or on my floor, curled up, on my own, like red hot, but shivering and sweating, but freezing. And it really, it's a really strange how it works. It's almost like it's like you're rattling off something, with the cold sweats and the stuff that comes with it. But yeah, to sort of touch on what you just said, it's another problem in itself is that rehabs and detoxes and services are expecting ketamine users to get to certain meetings and one-to-one appointments and go and sit in a group for an hour, 2-3 hours, to be able to look at getting them into your detox and your rehabs. But the reality of it is, some of these people are that unwell from ketamine that they physically cannot turn up and present to a one-to-one appointment because they can't even drive there without needing a toilet or getting out of bed. So there's quite a lot of different challenges, I believe, that ketamine brings to the table that other substances don't, So, yeah.
Yeah. That is a really good point, because it's something I think about a lot. I mean, so we're like, when I'm, teaching groups in treatment, and like people are getting up and going to the toilet, it is a massive distraction to the group. And I was just thinking I should be, grateful to some degree that like they don't have ketamine here and that's not happening, because like ketamine, like the people are going to be getting up every 5 minutes, and even when they're not getting up, all they're going to be thinking about is how irritated their bladder feels, isn't it? It's like, I mean, what do you think would be the best? I mean, you've been through rehab. What do you think? How do you think that's going to work for ketamine addiction?
So there's a couple of different things. So for us, again, my second time round, or even my first time I weren't going to the toilet too much. I was getting the pains and stuff, but my bladder were on the verge of getting weak and going. Now the second time it was gone. So it was one of them. I had the conversations and I explained, this is what happens. I'm going to need the toilet a lot, X, Y, and Z. And the rehab were dead understanding. They come really understanding. And they said, look, if you need toilet, just nip out. Now, when I started group therapy, you could almost see, I was getting up quite often, you can see people turning around, someone's reading an important piece of work and I'm getting out to go to the toilet, and you could sort of sense that people were thinking, why does is he taking the mick? Is he, all that sort of stuff. And then you get the other people jumping on the back of it then, people who've been on other substances just getting up to go to the toilet. Now, it worked for a little bit, but then when another couple of people come in from ketamine, you can imagine if you've got a group of 12 people and there's 5 or 6 of you who are addicted to ketamine, you're talking every 10 minutes someone's going, which in a group setting can be very distractive, like you said. So for me, something I believe in is ketamine-specific rehabs and detoxes. It's a tall order, you're asking someone then to put a load of money in a pot and set specific stuff up, and I get it, it's a tall order. However, I think you take away the issue of distracting other people's recoveries who are in for other stuff, who might be easily distracted, but also then you can accommodate specifically for people's needs who are addicted to ketamine. Other than that, the only other solution really is that rehabs have got enough toilets for the amount of ketamine users they've got. Ensuite bathrooms are a massive thing. They've got the stuff in place for girls for hygiene, the pads and deodorants and stuff in toilets, and that they're understanding about it, that they know these people are addicts. This is the damage they've caused, so we've got to understand and work around your needs. For me, off the top of my head, I can't think of any other way around it other than that, getting all ketamine addicts together or just working around the needs.
I think that it's going to be taken more seriously, because I think I'm not going to quote the statistic. I did read it yesterday, but I can't exactly remember the number. But it's hundreds of % increase in the past between 2023 and 2024 of ketamine users. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's really, really ridiculous. And I could often say, like, when I remember when I was 18 and I was in London asking for Ket, and people would tell me to fuck off, basically, because they knew what it was. They knew that was, they put it in the same category as heroin back in the day. And then it's just amazing. But they knew down there because it had been there a long time, and the rest of the UK don't really know, and many other countries which it's spreading through. You know, I'm seeing it starting to appear more in New Zealand, in Australia. It's starting to become more and more popular. You know, the rave scenes and the backpacker thing, the European backpackers are just spreading it around, and I think the whole world's gonna feel this one. And so there really needs to be a way of dealing with it that's really effective, and maybe a medical detox sort of situation needed. Like alcoholics will go in and have a medical detox because it's unsafe for them to do that because of stroke and stuff like that, and seizures. So I think that ketamine's going to be the same situation where people need to go in for some detox medical assistance before they're coming into a situation like that, and stabilising and getting the pain management under control. And I'm sure that there's something that can be done. And as we say, that we've seen that department of the hospital being set up in Liverpool for children. And so I do think that it's possible. I mean,
Yeah.
for anyone who's like, sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just quickly touching, obviously, from New Zealand, something now that is the usual case is when someone's presenting with physical effects to your drug and alcohol services, they do usually send them to a detox now before rehabs. So that is something that's now has become the usual pathway. Again, for me, that weren't even an option. Never mentioned detox, so I had to get as much painkillers as I could, grin and bear it, and sit in group room and just hold my stomach and my bladder and just try my best. Whereas now it is quite a well-known pathway that you'll go to a detox, try and manage your pain and get you to some level before you go into rehab. So it is quite quite a known route now, that, luckily. But again, that's only been genuinely in the last 6 or 7 months, I'd say, that it become the norm, that's what needs to happen.
That's normal here. That's what we do. People will go for either 1 or 2 weeks to social detox, and they might have been to medical detox before that, so they might do medical detox, then social detox, just to also get used to being in a situation where there's rules and learning to toe the line a little bit before they come up to the program and cause chaos. So see whether they're going to be able to manage that. So just for anyone who's using ketamine, what do you think the first warning signs are to look out for?
Do you mean in terms, so are we talking now someone who's using it, or like someone to look out for in someone who's using it?
So for someone who's using it.
Right, do we mean the sort of first physical signs, or social, or just in general?
Anything that someone needs to look out for, that, like, because they say the chains of addiction are too light to be felt till they're too heavy to be broken. What is it that people need to look out for? Like I really need to stop now because this is a problem. This is leading somewhere really bad. Yeah,
so I think I'm going to take it right back to when I first should have got worried, and it was the time when, look, people take it, drugs can be used in an environment where it's a few of your mates having a laugh, few pints, bag of coke, bag of ket, you go home. I'm not going to promote it, I'm really not, because the chances are you could end up addicted and you could end up in a bad way. But there is people that can use drugs recreationally. For me, it's when it gets to the point where you're waking up on a Sunday and you're thinking about using, or you're finishing work on a Monday, you're thinking about using. When it's creeping in any other time than maybe a Friday night or a Saturday night, if you're doing it with your mates and you have control over the substance, you can take it and leave it. You're not bothered if you don't have it for 2, 3, 4 weeks, months, then you fancy it. That can be done. However, I think when it's starting to consume you and you're losing control of when you're using the substance starting to use you more than you using the substance, that's, for me, was the first telltale sign. I was waking up on a Sunday and wanting ketamine because I was rough, and if someone would have said that to me, in hindsight, looking back, they would have said, that's a problem and that looks like addiction. Possibly would I have acted on it, I don't know, but for someone who's listening, hearing that now could be a game changer for if that happens, Obviously, you've got the stuff down the line when you're starting to get ket cramps and ket bladder and stomach ulcers and stomach pains and kidney, liver, all the sort of pains you're going to get internally. If you've got to that point, then you must have you've not just had an odd bag on a weekend, so you're taking quite a lot. So I think it's quite apparent that it's problematic. So I think for me, stripping everything else away and taking it right back, it's creeping into the day after and chucking days in during the week. And, you know, that for me when it started transitioning from recreational to I need this substance because it's doing something for me.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I don't know if I would have said that if you'd asked me. I think that's great, and I think it's like if you are starting to think that, I think, you know, from a harm reduction sort of perspective, like I think if that's happening to you, to deal with that, then probably there's some areas of your life which are not doing too good. Because one of the ways that harm reduction looks at it is to reduce the harm they don't always actually try and work on the addiction and actually like the using. They'll say, okay, let's look at all the areas of your life and let's make some improvements in those. So they'll look at like how your relationship's doing with your partner, how your relationship's doing with your family in general, what's going on with your work, is your boss, how's your relationship with your boss, and quite often relationships one of the biggest things. How are your finances looking? You know, how's your physical health? Are you taking care of that? And they'll start to work in those areas. So that's why I think it can be really good to actually go and talk to someone at that point. If you're thinking about it creeping into the next day, go see a counsellor, go talk to Finlay, you know, send Finlay a message. Just reach out to someone and actually have a chat with them. Are you isolating yourself? I know that's something that came up for you. It's one of the biggest things that, practically the biggest thing in recovery is you need to like working on strengthening relationships. You know, getting the communication really open, honest, speaking about you. If you've got some difficulties, find someone you can trust to share your mind with. You know, open up to. Work on getting that balance across all areas of your life. So I think, but it can be really hard to figure out what the hell's going on, can't it? When in the beginning. Like, why am I feeling this way? What's actually going on? So that's why actually talking to someone else can really help, isn't it? Because they can actually have the conversation and start to shine light on some things that maybe you'd put in the dark.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely spot on. You said something there, James, and I know we touched about it just before we started. It's something that I talk about a lot because I do believe, you know, I believe it's the truth, and I believe it can be a game changer for people. So sometimes it's what you've just said, you know, it's kind of in other words. So much energy is put into the substance, whether that's ketamine, cocaine, weed, alcohol, whatever it might be. A lot of people look at, I need to stop drinking, I need to stop sniffing, I need to stop, so on and so forth. For me, you know, and a lot of people believe this, it's not the substance that's the problem. It's our heads, you know, it's our way of thinking, it's our beliefs, you know, it's how we handle emotions, how we handle stress, everything that makes us a human. For us, the way I seen it, I was out of tune. You know, I felt weird. I couldn't handle stuff properly. And when I took weed for the first time, or cocaine or ketamine, it took all that away. It was almost like, when you talk about having them shackles and them chains, it's almost like they got cut off when I was under the influence and I was sort of free. So it's exactly what you've just said, James. It's looking at, right, okay, let's forget about the substance for a little minute, you know, and let's look at what is it, why is it you feel this way, what is it you're escaping, what is it you're running from, what is it that makes you uncomfortable about yourself. You know, it's all the stuff that you've just said. I'm just sort of putting it in the words that I do to people I speak to. And I think, like you've just said again, when you start to look at them areas of your life, all of a sudden, that addictive side of you can just start to be set free. You know, it's like when you go to rehab. You don't take a magic pill. You don't get given some magic book or that you read or you do, and all of a sudden your addiction's gone. All you're doing is sitting down and talking and doing work on yourself. Some of them take it right back to childhood, to being born, and they go right through your life and they'll look at every relationship, every bit of trauma, you know, everything, and they'll pick things apart and make sense of who you are, why you think like you do, and all the stuff we just talked about. And all of a sudden, you get more of an understanding about yourself, and things start to make sense, and you can start to look at problems for what they are and not want to run away from them and use substance to block out and to, disconnect. So yeah, it's something I speak about a lot at James, is look at the problems, take it back to childhood, take it back to certain events in your life that you know are sort of pivotal, and you know that's when things changed, or if you can see them patterns. But yeah, absolutely.
So thanks for that. So one question that I know that you wanted to talk about is, why do you think ketamine addiction is so prevalent at the moment?
Yeah, again, ties into what we've just talked about. For me, there's a few different areas. I think you've got the availability, which is massive. At one point it was easy for me at 12 o'clock at night to go and pick up an 8 for ket than it were to get a loaf of bread, genuinely. You've got the price, which now is way more attractive than it were when me and you first started probably taking it. I used to pay 70 quid for 3.5 gram, and now if I were to go out, I'd get it that amount for 20 quid. So you're talking under half price. Then you've got the stuff that we've just talked about, James, is, we're all using for a reason.
That's ridiculous. That's so cheap.
Is it? Crazy, isn't it?
That's outrageous.
20 quid. So even look at it from, I remember in school, we used to get a £5 a day for dinner, or for, whatever. Oreo chip too in school, and you've got an 8 for ket. Now at that age, when you've not been taking it long, you're gonna be K-lad off that. So if you want value for money, as a young lad, young lass, £5 chip, a £5, and you're getting that disassociation, the tripping, you're getting, we used to spend 20 quid between us and get cider and fags and go and get wrecked on parks. They don't need to do that now. They spend £5 each and they're getting 10 times the high and the whatever. Sort of taking it back is, for me, we've got to look at society. We've got to look at, especially younger people as well. What's up with these people? Why do they feel the need to disassociate? What is it they're wanting from the substance? And the reason I've obviously my own journey, but something that stands out to me is we went into a school a couple of months back. I won't say where or names or anything for obvious reasons. And I spoke to a young lad, and you know what? I looked at him and he reminded me a little bit of me in school. He was a little bit cocky, bit of a class clown, the loud one, acting a little bit of a tough man, and that's sort of what I did in school. I was an idiot in school. Now, I started talking, telling my story, speaking about ketamine, blah, blah, blah. And he started off back at class swinging on his chair, like you do. And by the end of my talk, he'd come to the front of the classroom and he was answering questions and he was keen. And at the end, I could see that he wanted to talk to me. His mates had left and he's looking at me. Now, his mates walked out and he said, "Can I speak to you, Finn?" And we had a chat. We got chatting. And he was 13-year-old, this young lad. Sound, right nice young lad when you got speaking to him, well-mannered, just lost. And I said, what's going on? And he said, "I'm taking ketamine, taking it with my mates and blah, blah, blah." I said, "How much are you taking?" And anyway, long story short, I said to him, "What do you know the harm, what's being caused, the long-term effects, the short-term effects?" And he just laughed. He laughed. He said, "Well, it's not good for you, is it?" I said, "Right, let's have a little bit of a chat. I'll tell you what will happen to you if you keep taking it. I'll tell you where to get support." And we had a good chat. And by the end of it, the amount of fear he had compared to the start, because now I've given him a bit of an education and understanding of what this drug really is. You could see the fear in him as he was walking out. But within the sort of conversations we was having, he was telling me about his home life, parents in addiction, been in and out of prison, been in and out of social services and stuff. He'd been in and out of care homes. Didn't feel like he fit anywhere. Probably didn't feel heard or wanted or loved. And he had all these things going on. And I was sat and I thought, and I never said it to him, and I wouldn't ever say this to anyone. And I thought, there's no wonder young people like that who are going through that amount of trauma are looking for an escape, And it sums it up. I think it's society as a whole. We've got massive numbers in addiction, mental health, poverty, all them sort of things, them sort of problems that we face. And because they're happening in older people, now it's being passed down generations because of broken homes. And it's that saying, hurt people. And I believe it's that, me, genuinely.
It's devastating, when you hear people's stories. like people I work with, like I'd say 95% had things happen to them in life which are so devastatingly unbelievable that you can't. I mean, like you hear things that you just can't even imagine that people have bared with, and it makes me think about the people that I've spent time with, like the people that I've grew up, the people that I've been using with. We had so much fun doing so many things, and it was all very jovial. And no, it wasn't all. Off a lot. A lot of it was very jovial when we were together. The times in between were definitely the darkest. But like when you're all together, you go into the rage, you're flying around, you're buzzing around with your friends, and you're just trying to have the best time you can possibly have. No, that was going on. But then it just makes you think, what was underneath that? What was underneath the drugs and that? Because now I actually see what's underneath because I deal with it, and it's just like. There must be so much sexual abuse. There must be so much domestic violence, the abuse. Parents possibly have died when they were young, and all these things. Yeah. I don't know hardly anything about any of these people's lives. No, we've said we were friends. I don't know anything about it. It was all on the surface. I don't know a thing. I always like to laugh because I don't know what people did as a job. No idea. I don't know what they did for work. Like you never ask questions. How are you? What was it like for you growing up? Like nothing. You don't care what you're in through. What are your hopes and dreams? What are your goals for life? What do you want? A family? Do you want nothing? Like nothing. It's all about what techno are you into? What's your favourite banger? What's your favourite tune? What's what you're doing on the weekend? I mean, it doesn't go any further than that. For years, like a decade, you can be in that. It just doesn't go any further than that, does it? So you just don't know what pain people are actually in underneath that band-aid of the drugs.
Yeah, exactly that. And again, it just masks stuff, doesn't it? Then there's the other side of stuff as well. There's the self-medication side. A lot of people I speak to that come through our groups have got ADHD, autism, neurodiverse, I think they call them. Neurologically challenged. I'm not sure the correct terms on it. We're seeing a massive sort of correlation, and I know in general addiction and sort of them sort of challenges come hand in hand anyway, and it's known within cocaine. I think 1 in 4 cocaine addicts have got ADHD, something along those lines. But I do believe there's a massive link and correlation now with ketamine as well. So you've got the whole other aspect of people self-medicating for actual, I'm not going to call them diseases because they're not diseases, are they? But for challenges, mental challenges, however you want to name it. So there's all these different aspects, isn't there? There's all different branches of why people take stuff. And I think it sort of goes on, and everyone's different. But yeah, so that's sort of things that I see. You can almost tell with some of the people that we speak to that they've never sat with anybody and been asked, how are you feeling? And again, like you've just said, I'm not talking surface level, how's your day been or how's your week been? Genuinely, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about life? Where's your head at? What's going on for you? These young people aren't being asked these questions, and because life's so fast paced and everyone's so busy and everyone's doing a job, and people don't stop and think that we need to be having these conversations with them and finding out, like you've just said, deep rooted stuff. How do they take what's going on at home for them? Because all that's going to happen, they get put into these behaviour schools, and don't really do too much education. They just try and get them through. Then they leave. Then they end up turning to crime because they've not got careers, because they've had the backs turned on. People have turned their backs on them. Then they end up even deeper into addiction, and it's just a cycle. It really is a cycle. So for me, I think more time and effort needs putting in when they're younger. Catch them young, work with them, work through the stuff, turn their lives around. Then they go on to be productive members of society.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really hard. I mean, especially the ADHD thing. It's really hard because, the impulse control doesn't exist. You feel it, you do it. Hyperactivity often, and it's just a recipe to irritate people by pushing their buttons, because that's just what ADHD does. It just pushes people's buttons, and it just go, and it's I relate to it. I've never been formally diagnosed, but I've You know, like I've read the DSM-5 criteria for ADHD, and there's only one box that I can't tick. So I know, you know, I'm definitely feeling that I needed some support with that. Certainly, you know, you're at school, you're the naughty one, you're the one that disturbs the class all the time.
Yeah.
You're the one that the teachers are always frustrated with. You're the one that feels like, you know, you can never do anything right because you're constantly getting criticised because you're constantly doing things that annoy people. You know, and it's certainly people come through rehab, and it's just like it's really, really hard for people in that situation. It's really hard for them to be in rehab at all. It's a very difficult situation, and it's definitely definitely massively that people self-medicating for things like that. And like, you know, before I worked in the mental health field, I definitely would have been. I wasn't pro medication particularly, and I wasn't against it either. But I would definitely lean more against it, and I suppose that I still do. However, I've seen that there are cases where people need medication. That's just for sure. They're like, sometimes people really need it to get going. Maybe they're not going to need to keep staying on it, and then there's some people that maybe will actually need to be on it for life, particularly with schizophrenia, people who have psychosis. If you know, you don't want people to hearing voices isn't helpful, and
No.
it happens, and it's common. It's really common that I wasn't aware of this, certainly while I was living in the UK, that this is really a big thing, but actually it's really common that we get people coming through with psychosis, schizophrenia.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing, ADHD, like the way that people's bodies are, kind of like the discomfort that ADHD can cause in people's bodies and the restlessness. When people have really, really, really severe ADHD, the medication's really helpful. So I don't know what it's like in the UK in terms of people seeking help for mental health and medication and stuff like that. I'm really not sure what it's like over there. In New Zealand, it's very good. It's definitely overprescribed, overdiagnosed, and that's a massive problem as well. So it's really hard, isn't it? Things like that, managing that. But I've definitely seen cases where if it's really severe, it's helpful. But it's also addictive for ADHD as well, you know. So it's a bloody minefield, that is, but it can be helpful.
Yeah.
So, Ketamine Education Services, this is something that you started how long ago?
I'm going to say 6 or 7 months ago, off the back of the first meeting we set up. I got so much engagement from other services and people messaging, what is it, can I attend, X, Y, and Z. Now I just thought, look, I've been there, I've done it, I've got this sort of, not in a cocky way, you know, but I've got the t-shirt, been through the pain, I know what I needed to do to get clean. I've had a relapse, you know, I've got quite a bit of experience, and I love helping people, so it's a good mixture there of what I needed to set something up to try and help people. The first meeting took off, and then we set the second up, and I thought, well, we need a name, you know, let's make it official, let's set a name up, let's make it a brand. And we did, you know, Ketamine Education Service. And yeah, it took off, and it very quickly just shown the size of the problem and the fact that something like this is so needed. Just a peer-led support group where people come in. We don't talk about, we talk about other substances if we need to, but it's specific to Ket. We don't, and no one else comes in who wants to talk about any other substance and try and take over, you know, and that's not because for any reason other than that there is other meetings out there. This was set up specifically for Ket because there was nowhere else to go. So we talk about Ket, we talk about the problems. There's no judgment. It's dead relaxed. We're not chucking loads of rules at people and shouting the odds to people. It's just come in, let's have a chat. You know, if you've got some questions, fire them into the room. Someone might be able to answer them. And yeah, we've set the groups up, and we're going to some weeks school every day, you know, sometimes a couple a day, and you know, we're flat out with it, and it's good to be able to use my experience to try, and it's that thing, you know, I can't make a massive difference on my own, I just can't, and I'm aware of that, and I don't go around telling people I'm changing the world. I'm just doing my little bit, you know, and if going into school, if I speak to 300 kids and one of them takes a little bit of notice, I'm happy with that, genuinely. I know a lot of people say it, but I genuinely am. If in the groups, you know, we've got 4 at the minute, 2 online, 3 in person. If one person a week in them groups goes away and gets something from it, I'm happy. It's enough. And I can quite confidently say the numbers are a lot more than that. But, you know, it's good. It's good, and it's something I don't really speak about a lot. I don't talk about this enough, but about the fact that I've turned such a negative experience into a positive. And, you know, I was the last person in the world to be positive. I just weren't. Everything was negativity. And I got clean this time, and I've seen an opening, I've seen an opportunity to turn the last 6, 7, 8 years of my life I've spent in addiction to one or another substance into a positive and use that for something, and, you know, and make them years, rather than be wasted, be with something. And I say it quite often to people now, I wouldn't change my addiction. I wouldn't. And although I wouldn't have my family through what I did, I'd change that, genuinely. Everything else I wouldn't change, because I've learned so much about myself, about the world, about people, about addiction, you know, and it's got me way more grounded than I ever did. You know, going into my first rehab, going on a bit of a tangent here, I can be quite bad for this. Going into my first rehab, stigma around heroin addicts and crack addicts, and, you know, these were the terms that I was using: smackheads, crackheads, you know, all them derogatory terms that now, if someone said it to me, I'd pull them and say, well, you know, let's change our language. I went in and met people that I've always been told that are going to be bad people, and you know what? I met some of the most amazing people I've ever met, who have been homeless for the last 30 years, addicted to heroin and alcohol. And they give you the last pound if now they're sober. And it's so eye-opening just to see that these people that society look down on and think aren't human beings, it showed me very early that we're all human beings, and it doesn't matter what you're addicted to. It doesn't matter what background you come from. We can all end up in the same place. And 9 times out of 10, we're all good people who just made bad decisions, you know. So yeah, I apologise for going on a bit of a tangent then, but my brain can be a little bit scattered with stuff.
I enjoy that personally. I think it's really funny when someone goes on a tangent, and some people are confused, and I understand.
Yeah.
So what's next for Ketamine Education Services? What do you see happening in the future? I personally think that the government should just give you full-time wage to just go around the country and just talk to people about this and chat to people, because I think, you know, surprisingly, you're the first person I've actually heard of. I mean, my friend Mason put me in contact with you because he became aware of you. The first person that I know that's doing anything for ketamine, like actually running support group. Like, I've known people have done it online, but you're the first person I've seen actually like properly set something up. So what do you see is next for Ketamine Education Services?
What's next? So we're going to make it a little bit more official. We're just in the process of setting up as a CRC charity. We've just had our first bit of funding off somebody. They've asked to be anonymous, so I can't really name them. So that enables me now to push forward. They want me to use the money they've paid to pay for the groups I'm running and fuel and all the expenses that I've covered for the last 6 or 7 months. Now I can start earning something, because I've not earned a penny. You know, I've never charged a school or a college for going in. They've offered it. I've never charged it because I didn't get into it to make money. So I've set up as a CRC, try and get ourselves a little bit more well-rounded and look at getting things in place from a more professional point of view, and just keep doing what we're doing and try and expand. We're always looking at groups for people who want to jump on and come and do the talks with us and get them DBS'd, and try and, you know, look at how can we do our little bit to help someone else, you know. And we've had people who've come to our groups who now have gone and set their own groups up, you know. So yeah, just try and keep helping and making a difference, and just doing what I think I can and what's right, I suppose, and just go with the flow.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I could see it being a national and even an international thing, because I think if you put the resources, you know, got some good resources, I think that it's something that, it could be played, videos that could be played to videos or in schools or whatever, you know, like it's so needed. And it's funny, isn't it? Because I bet you've had a fair bit of attention from doing this. And I bet you've had quite a lot of people contact you about this, because it's just no one's doing it. It's really, and it's so needed. So I guess if anyone's listening right now who's struggling with addiction, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, look, you've got to be honest with yourself first. Stop with the justifications and trying to play things down. Just be honest with where you're at. Then be honest with somebody else that you trust, whether it's a drug and alcohol service, your wife, your girlfriend, your brother, your sister, mum. Be honest with somebody. Reach out and get the support. Google your local drug and alcohol service. Ring them. Tell them where you're at. Find your local fellowship meetings. They might not be ketamine meetings, but just go and surround yourself with people who are trying to get clean and sober. Connection is the opposite of addiction, I believe. And if you get connected with the right people, you're boosting your chances of getting clean and sober. Go and do the right things. Get out on walks. Go and play football. Go and try dancing. Go and try the stuff that addiction takes away from you. And get back involved in that fun stuff and the stuff where you're around positive influences. And diet, nutrition, sleep, recovery, everything. It all comes hand in hand, and try and get everything as neat and tidy as you can. And it's easier said than done, I get that. But they're the sort of main things. But for me, connection and honesty and communication are the three biggest.
Amazing. Couldn't have said it better myself. So where can people find you?
We're on Facebook and Instagram, Ketamine Education Services. We're also on TikTok. I don't really use it too much, but we're on Facebook and Instagram, Ketamine Education Services.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Finlay. I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a valuable episode for a lot of people.
Listen to the show and hit subscribe to free yourself from the shackles of the mind. And if you find some benefit, please share it with a friend, and let's make the world a better place together.